In the opening and the middle game, king is usually not participating, but in the endgame, it becomes a really important piece. Centralization of the king is one of the main principles of endgame play, and centralizing the king is almost always a good idea. White is better, black has an isolated pawn and weak dark squares on the queen side, especially c5. The win should be easy, transfer the king on d4 and knight on c3, when black will practically be in a zugzwang. But actually it's not that easy, because white has his weak points as well. His pawn formation is not perfect. If h pawn is on h2, all would be much easier. So black is gonna create a counterplay using a hook on h4. g5 takes. White is forced to take, because if takes, white will obtain a weak pawn. h5 is possible as well. So takes, knight b4. If f4, then takes, and d4. Black would lose this pawn, but activate his bishop, and he would have good drawing chances, because of the limited material remaining. After knight b4, we have takes, and bishop b7. g4. Black's only counter chance is h5. There are two ways to prepare this push, using the king, or centralize the king, and then use the bishop to support the pawn. Black chose the wrong plan. Instead of centralizing his king, he went king g7, king e2, king g6, king d3, h5, takes, king d4, king h4, knight takes, king g3, f4 of course, saving the pawn, and now g4. Black loses after takes, g4, f5, king h3, f6, g3, f7, g2, queen h8, king g2, and queen g8. After g4, we have f5 and bishop c8. On bishop c6, knight c7, taking away square from the black bishop. After bishop c8, king e5, protecting a pawn, bishop d7, e4. Knight c7 doesn't work in this position because of the bishop f5, takes, and king f3, and this is gonna be a draw. After e4, bishop e8, and king d4. This was a mistake. Better was f6, king f3, knight f4, g3, king f5, bishop d7, king g5, bishop e6. And now knight can actually take this, because after g2, f7, new queen, and king f6. And we are promoting. After king d4, king f3, e5, g3, knight e3, stopping the pawn, and now king f4. This was a decisive mistake in a drawn position. Also a mistake would be bishop d7, e6, bishop c8, e7, bishop d7, f6, bishop e8, and knight f5. The way to draw this position was bishop f7, and after e6, bishop g8, e7, on b4, king f4, and white is in zugzwang, and on e7, bishop f7, f6, and king f4 as well. And black is fast enough to pick up these pawns, while the knight has to stay here to not allow this pawn to become a queen. But now after the decisive mistake, king f4, we have e6, g2, takes, king d5, king g4, knight e3, king f4, and now king d4. Black resigned because there is no defense against e7, followed by the transfer of the knight to c7. Now let's go back and see how black should have approached the position. He should have centralized the king, king f7, king e2, king f6, king d3, and king e5. Now black is threatening d4 followed by king f4. So that's why knight c2, bishop c6, knight d4, bishop e8, supporting the advance, king c3, h5, takes, king b4, g4, takes, king e4, king c5, and take on e3. And black gains a draw. Of course, in the practical game, it would be impossible to calculate all the above variations, so following the general rule of centralizing the king is in a majority of cases gonna give you great results.